and then we'll start presenting. Okay, it's 10:01, so I think we're going to start now. So hi everyone, thanks for joining us. Welcome to our show and tell for Open Digital Planning. My name is Freya Kainen, and I'm a Digital Transformation Officer at Southwark Council, and I'm going to be running you through our introduction, agenda, and picking up some questions during this presentation as well. So for anyone who hasn't come to one of our show and tells before or is new to Open Digital Planning, we are creating services to improve the planning process and to improve people's understanding of planning. So there's two different projects that we're running. The PlanX project is looking to develop new digital services for submitting planning applications and for learning about planning and getting guidance. And one of the other purposes of this project is to reduce the reasons for incorrect or invalid planning applications that we receive at local authorities. So through PlanX, we also want to improve the planning service and the experience for the applicants. And the purpose of the BOBS project, so that stands for Back Office Planning System, and the purpose of that project is to create a really great back office system for processing planning applications. So this system has been designed by and for planning officers, and it's to enable more efficient decision making, to open up planning data, and to achieve our project vision, which is to imagine a world where data and digital tools are quicker and easier to use to provide a better planning service. So these open digital planning products are being developed collaboratively between Southwark, Lambeth, Buckinghamshire, our other partner councils, and the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. And our development is completed by Unbox Consulting and Open Systems Labs. Okay, so on to the agenda. So just some housekeeping. If you're watching this live, then we'd love to take any questions you have. We'll be taking questions at the end of each section. So please pop those in the chat and we'll pick those up. Please do try and stay on mute during this call just to avoid any background noise coming up. And yes, we will take any questions that you have. So just put those in the chat and then we can respond to you during this call. So our agenda for today, we're going to be looking at BOBS first. So we're going to be talking about a content audit that we started, some updates on the assessment and review processes in BOBS, and also some of the discovery and alpha work on the National Planning Register project. We're then going to move on to PlanX updates. So there's been lots of small usability improvements that we're going to list, some back office workarounds that we're going to explain how those work, and also the send to email function. And then service content updates, looking at the lawful development certificate, job curves, solar panels and changes to use of land processes. And then finally, we're going to have someone from DLUG talk about the Planning Software Improvement Fund. Okay, next slide, please, Sarah. Great, so first update is about BOBS. So we've been doing a BOBS content audit over the last sprint. This is something that we decided to do because we want to really make sure that the content on BOBS is really accessible, easy to understand, and consistent. So everything that we've developed on BOBS has been developed in line with the GDS service standard. So for anyone who isn't aware, that's the Government Digital Service Standard, which is it's used to support the development of consistent and user-friendly end-to-end government digital services. So it's basically a design system that's been really well tested, really accessible, and we use it across a lot of local government services. So all the content on BOBS follows those standards, but as time goes on, as we're adding new pages and new bits of content that are made by different people, it's quite easy to sometimes start using our own standards that don't completely align with GDS. Especially when these changes have come about due to user testing. So we wanted to put in place an audit system for checking what we add to the service to make sure that there's a really clear approach for everyone who's already on the project or who might join the project in the future, so that we're making that really consistent content on BOBS. So we've been carrying out an audit, which is ongoing. It will keep on going throughout the lifetime of creating Bobs, looking at the content, including all the status tags that we use. So the status tags on that screenshot, it's the little coloured buttons that we use on there. And this has been a really useful exercise because we noticed some things. For example, we have around 20 status tags, which was more than I think we thought we had. So some of these mean similar things. So to avoid confusion, that's quite an easy win that we can actually strip those down and make them a bit more simple for the users to understand. So during the audit, we went through each piece of content across the whole service. We listed out the acceptance criteria, which is the reasons why we have that content. And then we're looking at what changes we can make to the language to make it plain English and accessible, for example. And we're putting those through as Trello tickets so they can be signed off by everyone. So I'll just share my screen for a moment to show you what that looks like. I won't go through this in detail, but you can see here, this is some of our status tags, lots of different colours, and this is the sort of GDS standard here. So we're just working on what changes we can make, and then we're creating those in the Trello tickets, and we've done that for every different system of pages throughout the Bobs server. So that's an ongoing thing that we're going to keep adding to and keep learning from. I'll pass on to Rosanna now to talk a bit more about the content audit.
Thanks, Freya. As Freya's just mentioned, a lot of the iterations are informed by the user testing that's been happening as well. So while we've been going along, we've just been making sure when we're looking at things that need to be updated content-wise that comes out of the research that's taken place, we actually do that and make those improvements. Alongside this as well, we're working closely with the designers as well, who are just making sure that things are consistent in terms of the interface of each page. So things like there's a clear hierarchy around the types of headings and how things are formatted on the page as well. All of this work we're doing, we hope to inform some content guidelines so that when we are continuing to build and work on the product, these things are sort of ready that we can use and carry forward as part of what we design and build. And that's it.
Right, I think we're passing on to Stephen now to look at the assessment and review.
Yeah, we would be. Unfortunately, I can't share my screen, so I don't know if Ed wants to go now, and I'll go after Ed.
Yeah, quite happy to do that. So really, I'm just going to talk you through quickly some bits around the planning register. So as part of the roadmap for BOPS in this current 6-month period up to January next year, we have got the planning register in there. So we have now started that project. We've been working on it for 2 or 3 weeks now. And we had a alignment workshop last Wednesday, where we, no, 2 weeks ago on Wednesday, where we got together as a team and we began working through our approach to the register work and the scope for alpha, risks, the ways we wanted to work. So we had a very good workshop where we've decided that we're going to look at prototyping a register to then test and get feedback on from users over the 8 to 12 weeks that we'll be doing this work. So we have started a round of discovery interviews with council users of the system. So we're looking at our product owners, planning officers, land registry and building control. So we're getting feedback and information from that. And we've got our first workshop this afternoon for our product owner interviews, where we'll be reviewing the feedback and the outcomes from those to sort of feed into our next steps of design. So the prototype that we're going to design will ultimately generate our minimum viable product for the register. And we've decided in our alignment workshop that we would go for the full range of application types in this register. with at least the minimum legal requirements on us from legislation for that register. So rather than looking at just one application type with a great depth of register information, we're going to look at the breadth of applications with a smaller amount of data and function sitting behind that. So really that's where we've got to. So the next steps for us over the next 2 weeks are obviously the workshop we got this afternoon, looking at our interviews that have been conducted. We're looking to create our roadmap and vision, and then really just starting the research, looking into things like what does the legislation actually mean for the register. I think it's all well and good that we've got that legislation, but it's translating that into something that can be that product. So we're very excited to have started this, and it's going to be quite a quick turnaround, aiming for that 8 to 12 week window, and we're already 2 or 3 weeks into that. So that's really all the update for the moment, and at the next show and tell we'll have some really good feedback and be able to share our vision and roadmap on this part of the project. If there's any questions, please pop them in the chat. I don't know, Stephen, are
Thanks,
you?
Ed. Yeah, no, I'm ready to go now. Thanks, Ed.
Excellent.
I'll take over the screen share. Okay. So good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Barnes, and I'm a senior planner at Lambeth. And today I'm going to walk you briefly through the assessment tool on BOPs, which is our minimum viable product for assessing lawful development certificates. And this is looking at it from the officer perspective. So we've designed this with the most common types of LDC in mind, and that's projects that haven't been started yet, and that would usually fall under householder permitted development rights. So before we jump in, we should give a thanks to all of the volunteers who participated in reviewing the early prototypes of this tool, and that was 12 officers from across 7 of the partner councils. So these are our dummy applications in our staging or test environment. And here we're looking at the in-assessment area. And these are cases that are already valid and ready to be assessed by an officer. So this is the task list for assess the application. Lots of the terms in these headings will be familiar to anyone who's put together an officer report. We've developed this tool in response to feedback that councils need to document what checks have been taken place and what's been considered, as well as the assess against legislation area of an assessment, which regulars to this show and tell will be quite familiar with. The amount of the headings and the sort of separate areas in here has been streamlined in response to feedback from our testers. And it should now be flexible enough to cover the essential parts of this most common type of application. So we can see that there's a state attached to each of the headings. So it gives you a very easy at a glance overview of where things are up to. And that would be visible to the case officer and maybe their manager or anybody else from the planning team who can access BOPs and come and have a look at where something's up to and whether it looks like something meaningful has been started. If we have a look in one of these areas, you can see here there's a few questions to sense check an application, first of all, make sure the red line matches what's actually being proposed. And all of these answers are recorded and auditable. If there's something that's not consistent and you just want to make a quick remark about that, that also can be saved as well. So we can save this, mark it as complete, or mark it as maybe something's come up when you're going through those questions and you want to come back to it later. And that's going to change the state in the previous screen on the task list so you can see where you're up to. Going back to the assess against legislation area, one of the improvements that we've made is to bring the most relevant data to the officer for this task. So some of the criteria in Class A might be to do with whether you're in a conservation area, and you can now go up to the top and have a quick check if there are any relevant constraints for that, which will help you answer and perform this task, all in the one section. So that's an approach that we'll be adopting more as the tools develop, showing the data that's most relevant to the task that's at hand. And here is an example of a more completed task list. This is based on a real public beta case that I was taking through the system to sort of test it out, see how it works with a sort of real assessment. And I was impressed that it is flexible enough for a sort of grey area case where the applicant had said this is an immune, this development was immune from enforcement action, but the evidence didn't quite support that, so it would still need to be assessed against the sort of class A. And I was able to do this without really using any workarounds, because there's sort of space here to put in some explanation and look at the other evidence that's come through apart from just the drawings. We've also made improvements to the way documents are added to decision notices. So having this on the task list, first of all, gives you a prompt as an officer to have a look at this, make sure that all the documents that you want to be on the decision notice are all there. And then if you haven't already sort of checked them over properly, or there's been a mistake at the validation stage and it hasn't been properly filed away, it will be very obvious to you here that it needs to be sort of labeled and made sort of, the reference needs to be sort of corrected so that it looks right on the decision notice and everything's in order and precise. And we'll continue to build in sensible fail-safes like this. If we go back to review and submit, so we can sort of see this is how all of these different areas come together, so that as an officer, before you put that over to your manager, you can have a quick review of what you put in. And this is similar to how the manager's going to see it as well. And you can see your draft decision notice with everything that's been taken into account all on this one page. And then finally, this is how it all sort of comes together when it's been reviewed by a manager. So here I'm looking at it from a manager account, which is like a planning manager or a senior officer who does the peer review. And as you can see, we're taking the same streamlined approach to the key tasks that are involved in reviewing a officer's recommendation. So next, we're going to be looking at fleshing out how the reviewers can communicate back things that need to be changed. If they do need to get an officer to add a bit more explanation, or there's a problem with a particular area of what they've said, there'll be a bit more functionality in this manager side of the screen so that they can communicate that. There's an audit trail, etc. So we're really keen to start getting that in use with real officers and real managers as well, so we can continue to learn more and really refine this. But yeah, that's everything that I've got to show you today.
Great, thanks, Stephen and Ed. We have had one question from Kemi. She said, is there a prompt for officers where they have started but not completed to take them back to review what they have done before closing that as fully completed?
Yeah, I think that is exactly the kind of, real world feedback that will come up. Definitely something to take into account. It's about having those sensible fail safes, and yeah, that would be an example of a really good one to have. Obviously, this is just a sort of working prototype to go out and test and really put through its paces. But yeah, things like that that's really valuable feedback. Thanks, Kemi.
Great, thank you. So we will take more questions at the end, but we're going to move on to the PanX updates now.
Thanks very much. I'll share my screen. there. So I have to apologize in advance. You're going to be hearing more of my voice this morning than you'd be expecting to, or wanting to, frankly, because unfortunately Lam is not feeling very well, and also George isn't here. So I'm going to be standing in and trying not to steal the credit from them, nonetheless show their work. So yeah. We're going to start off. The first thing we want to show, as we said, is a whole bunch of kind of fairly things that in themselves are quite small, but they're all part of this bigger picture of just improving the user's experience and the usability overall of the services that we currently have up running on PlanX. And they're all very much driven by an accumulation of stuff that we've picked up from user research over recently, but also, you know, some of them are kind of things we've been hearing from users for quite a while, so we're quite pleased to be able to do something about them. So one of the things that we've been done is that the perennial issue of kind of drawing with the maps, and one of the things is that users were finding it not necessarily obvious that they could start drawing because they had this hand icon. So now we've introduced this kind of crosshair icon. Now it has this sort of hand hovering over the top of it, and at some point we might want to get rid of that. At the moment it doesn't, and the feedback so far has been actually weirdly, or we're like, oh, that hand's annoying. Actually, some users said they quite liked having that hand, but I think it has helped in sort of signaling that, hey, you can start drawing your outline now. So just one of those ways that sort of can quietly make it a bit more intuitive. There is definitely kind of further, you know, drawing maps is one of the things we're doing that's quite new, and we're constantly kind of picking up feedback and looking at ways we can improve it. And I think there are further things in future we can do. One of the things that we do kind of get occasionally further feedback on is users being not quite sure how to end their shape. Should they double click, or should they click on the origin point, etc., etc. So and it's possible that we could in future explore some other stuff we could do with that, like having text instructions as you're drawing. And if you've used things like Google Earth and drawn maps on there, some of those sorts of tools do have those sorts of tips as well. But yeah, this kind of continuing to look at that. Every step is an improvement. Other small things like making the draw boundary map bigger. So there's stuff we could do in future as well that is there on the maps, like expanding to a full screen option. But actually, just in case, you know, we realize we may as well just make the map larger anyway, because we could. And when you get kind of very big or long, thin sites like this, it's just increasing the number of sites that can have that kind of zoomed in view and see those snap points on the map. Which are only visible when you're kind of sufficiently well zoomed in, without having to panel zoom so much. So we think that's a little improvement. Big question of the button. We're really sweating the small stuff here. The button that you use to delete your outline, if you want to go, oh no, that outline's wrong, I want to have another go. So previously we had this sort of reset button, which is pretty you know, common on sort of maps like this. It wasn't necessarily entirely clear, and one user pointed out, well, hold on a minute, it looks a bit like the refresh button that refreshes the whole thing. And others thought, well, is it going to just get rid of one you know, vertex at a time rather than the whole thing? So Lam tested a whole bunch of alternative options, and generally speaking, the upshot was that the reset one is most people like that, but actually the trash can icon is the one that leaves the least room for misinterpretation. So we think that's a good solid one to move forward with. It's pretty clear to everyone what that trash can button does, which is it gets rid of your red boundary so you can draw another one. And lots of other things like this are all the way through the service. There's just a few, and there's still more we're going to be doing here on fonts and stuff like that, but just making sure that those secondary action links were always consistent, always visible, or rather the right level of visibility, so you could see them. They were easy to see when you were looking for them. And then another thing we've introduced is the contact details component. So this definitely felt like one of the longest parts of the service when you're going, okay, what's your name? Generally speaking, most of the service has one question at a time. And it's been one on our hit list for a long time to do something about that, because certainly when you come to entering your contact details, it feels a bit odd. We're not used to doing that. Most services, you'd see your kind of your names and your email, etc., on one page at the same time. So we've built a component to do that within Plan X, which is just nice. It reduces, I think, 7 steps to 1 step. So that's just another step forward in terms of making things nicer. So that's a whole bunch of things. Another kind of bigger thing that's been going on in the background, which is kind of less visible, is to do with some of the back office workarounds. So, I mean, the context for this, which is quite funny really, is that obviously one of our big kind of our sort of driving at goals of this whole work is to, as far as possible, move the planning system from a system that uses documents where information is locked in PDFs to using data. So the information that's much easier to share and use and access. So we always say, documents to data is a good thing, right? Collecting as much information as we can as data rather than documents has generally been a goal. And that's fine when the place we're sending it to is BOPS, because BOPS has been built to receive data. So hooray, that's really good. But of course, our ambition is we're also using this with other back office systems as well. And a lot of those existing back office systems aren't expecting certain types of things as data. So an obvious example is the red line boundary. They're still expecting a PDF location plan, not necessarily a red line boundary as a piece of data. And so there's a bit of a problem here, which is then suddenly it meant that officers using existing back office platforms are having to do manual workarounds where they convert it back from data into documents, which seems a kind of a bit, funny, but that's the reality of sort of bridging the transformation process. And so we said, well, what can we do? What can we do about this that can help this? What we don't really want to be doing is generating PDFs as you click submit, because actually it crunches for a few seconds. And the last thing we want to do is introduce another thing when you're using the service. You click submit and your computer's going for a few seconds. Ben came up with a very, very clever workaround, I think, which is where what we're effectively doing is when we're taking that data, we've got that as data, but we'll package it up in some more lightweight formats, which are CSV and HTML, essentially automatically generating those documents as HTMLs. And we're attaching that HTML to the application as well. Just like files, right? We're also attaching boundary as a GeoJSON thing that can be used in various other back office systems as well that do the GIS thing. But making that HTML is quite nice because effectively, and I'll hop out here. Let me go back here. We can generate. You can open that HTML and then open up in your web browser. And everyone has a web browser. And of course, web browsers have the ability to make a PDF. You can just click print PDF at any time, and that's making it much easier. So hopefully, it's a really nice improvement in making it easier, making those workarounds much easier, because as I say, you've got those things attached. We're continuing work on that. So at the moment, you can see here we've got this sort of summary of all the data in the application, of all the information in the application here, and we've got a location plan. They will be split into 2 separate pages, so that essentially you've got a location plan with a north arrow and a scale bar that will sit on one page. So effectively, we're automatically generating that traditional location plan from the digital outline, as well as something like your traditional forms, so that they become documents if you need them to be documents for whatever system you are using. And on that, then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Daph to talk about another really cool thing that's sort of hidden in the background, which is send to email.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm David. I'm a developer here at Open Systems Labs, and I want to talk to you about the feature we've been developing, myself and my colleagues, which is sending to email. So as we've previewed before on some of these show and tells, currently Plan X submits to BOPS, as Alistair was describing there. We also integrate with existing back office systems, notably Uniform, and we're looking forward in the new year to be integrating with more and more existing back office systems such as Tascomi. However, what we're looking to do moving forward as well is also to send to email. Next slide, please. What that means is when an application is submitted, you can send it to all of these locations. So it can get sent to BOPS, can get sent to Uniform, and it could also get sent, for example, to the planning team's inbox. So there's multiple benefits of that. One is obviously a notification, as well as some of the internal Slack notifications we have. That would maybe be a more accessible place for a wider team to reach. And we also send along a link to the documents. So what that means is these existing services, which we've talked about before, and you may be familiar with if you've joined these shows and tells, like the LDC services, can integrate through that. But one of the really exciting features that I think this unlocks is those kind of discretionary and pre-app services. For example, it's brilliant to see some of the partners already looking at works to trees and existing kind of pre-app services, which will allow the users or the public to go through a service on PlanX, use that kind of web of knowledge and step through the graph logic, the decision tree, integrate with GIS features, integrate with GovPay, and then send an application to a dedicated inbox that doesn't necessarily tie in with existing back office systems. I think that really unlocks a whole lot of options there. And I think as well, another interesting development is going to be the ability for partners to develop internal mini services. So using the tools which they already have, such as PlanX, they can really use it for anything that involves that kind of complex knowledge or has high communication overhead. So an internal team at a council could create a flow through PlanX, as I said, with that kind of graphing logic, the decision tree, integrate with other services, and then that could be submitted to another internal team potentially, or an external location. So we're definitely looking forward to seeing how that develops and how those integrations work.
Amazing, thanks, Steph. Yeah, and to kind of reiterate what Steph's saying there, this is the reason this might seem a bit kind of abstract, but it's a really big deal for us in the sense that the vision for PlanX should be something that is agnostic, right? It can collect data in a really clever way, right? In using these sorts of logic graphs, the data, exactly the relevant data, but it should be able to send that data to anywhere. And we've written that, and that's a really kind of important principle for the future of it as a tool, as a piece of infrastructure. But the fact that we can also not just go for these kind of big integration connection points with the kind of big systems, but also do something as simple as allowing you to have applications arrive in an email inbox of your designation, means that potentially we're getting towards this point where actually could start, and it is starting right now, where councils can just say, hey, let's spin up a little service that does this, and this is the logic and these are the rules of it, and people will submit this, they'll pay a fee, and they just send it into an email inbox and we can sort it from there. So kind of hopefully giving council teams this ability to use it as a really kind of agile tool to kind of build these knowledge rich services. So yeah, that's a kind of exciting thing, I think, even if it sounds a bit abstract. Cool, yeah, there we are.
Yeah, and here, just for existing editors, this is how it's going to look. So the send component will allow you to toggle on that additional option. Of course, you can choose all three, as I was saying, or a combination. And as I said, it sends an email which has a link which allows you to download a zip file containing the application data plus any user uploaded documents. At the moment, during this kind of testing phase, it is just the CSV and images, but of course, using existing knowledge we've got from other integrations such as Uniform, things like the document viewer, which Alistair was describing there, or the kind of the raw GIS data would also be possible to include in that. Again, depending on the use cases of that service, we'd expose the kind of the raw data in the best format we can for the end user.
I'm wondering what kind of planning service it would be, that requires people to submit a photo of your dogs.
That's lovely. Important, yeah.
And yeah, so and just to kind of clarify that will be, so it says email to planning office. At the moment, I think you designate a single email address is it per service or per workspace?
Currently it's per workspace,
per council workspace. Yeah. So you would set what email address you want to receive applications to, and any applications would get that. You could tick this box on that component, would just get sent to there. So yeah, that's cool. Thanks, Steph. And then sort of the final next sort of section is where we kind of move on and we talk about the work that we're doing, building the services that we're building on the Planix platform. Most at the moment, pretty much all the work has been around the two services that we have running live at the moment, which are find out if you need planning permission and apply for a lawful development certificate. And obviously we're kind of, I'll talk about in a moment, we're kind of going to be moving ahead into the next set of services. But before we did so, there were some sort of particular journeys that had been on our kind of on our collective shopping list for a long time, that were common journeys that actually the partners really wanted to be included in those services. And so we've been adding some of those. So one of them is dropped curbs. So I've actually featured Doncaster here because it was particularly Doncaster. I mean, lots of councils I think have, but particularly Doncaster flagged, yeah, we get quite a lot of these, quite a lot of planning applications for drop curbs. And it's worth very quickly, I hope we have time, just to very quickly show you this. This journey will be in both find out if and in apply for lawful development certificate. But it's an interesting one of how we kind of navigate sort of an imperfect world sometimes. So and the complex world, because drop curves planning is a thing, but it's not the whole thing, because also actually even if you don't need planning permission for a drop curve, you still need to actually apply to your council to do the thing. And so we want to try and communicate that information. There's another issue that we had to navigate here, which is that actually whether or not planning permission is required to do a drop curb into a road very much is reliant on whether that's a classified road, i.e. a road with letters, or not, an unclassified road. Now that data is out there, but we're not currently pulling it in from our GIS. We said, well, can we find a middle ground? It's not yet pulling that in automatically, which would be our ideal end game for data like that. But can we still make a good user experience for now anyway, that allows people to have a decent user experience? So, and I will very quickly do this. I'm just going to use this address here. I have absolutely no idea. It's a lovely theatre. Let's say we want to do some stuff to these bits of ground outside. Here we are, it's a lovely, recently expanded map with our crosshair. I'm just going to arbitrarily draw a site. That's the worst site anyone's ever seen, etc., etc. We'll go into, it's in garden and outdoors. Let's say we're going to make changes to a public road, pavement, or path. Add a drop curb. And here we are. So here's the solution to one of those problems, which is, sure, in an ideal world, this question in the future will be automatically answered. We'll have already gone and fetched this bit of data, as we do for things like conservation areas, from a GIS map, and we'll have done some clever things to work out, is the road that this is crossing over into classified or unclassified. But for the meantime, hey, at least you can go and look it up. So we've provided those links there to say, look, if you don't know, because it's a slightly sort of weird bit of knowledge, you can go and actually look that up on a separate service. So and it opens in a new tab. So that's a kind of nice middle ground, hopefully. Let's say in this case it's not classified, which I'm pretty sure it's not. And so here's another interesting thing that's going on here. So those of you in the room who are planning experts will know that the permit development rights around drop curbs are slightly odd, which is it's not permitted development if it's the only thing you're doing. But if you're doing that drop curb as part of other works other than works to boundaries, it's okay. What's actually happened in the background here is it's actually done a check. So if I'd selected other works like extending or making a larger driveway, it wouldn't be asking this question. It would have known that, okay, you're doing something else, so you're all good, proceed. But here, I didn't select anything else. So it knows that, and it's saying, oh, well, hold on a minute, just want to double check. Are you doing anything else as part of this project? And say, oh, no, I'm not. It's also going to tell us about, by the way, you actually need to apply for a drop curb as well, and here it is. But then it's actually going to say, no, planning permission is needed in this case for that reason, because it's the only thing that you're doing. So anyway, that's cool. That's now included on those services. I won't go through all of these, I promise, don't worry. Solar panels on multiple roofs. This was a smaller change, but again, these are very much responding to projects that were coming in, and quite a few of these projects were coming in for understandable reasons. Right now, there's a big focus, a lot of people adding renewables to their houses, and a thing that we realized was that it wasn't offering a very good experience if you were doing solar panels on multiple different roofs, not just on one roof. So that's been added. And the newest one, which is not live yet, but is currently in testing, is change the use of land. And the most common way that this comes in is in situations where people maybe have a bit of land next to their garden, and they're sort of increased the size of their garden to sort of bring it in to be part of their garden, which is actually a change of use. So we wanted to make sure that the service can pick that up. So we're currently testing that, and then those types of journeys, as well as various other things to do with the use of land involving horses and all sorts of stuff, will also be picked up and part of the LDC service. So looking ahead, apart from a festive feeling of the holidays, what we've just kicked off is work we've been is building the next service, which is apply for prior approval. We've done a couple of great discoveries, workshops, and various desktop research to pull together kind of a map of what we're going to of this service to kind of prime us for this activity. And this is a really nice test for us to test out the reusability, because the whole point of having the PlanX platform is that we can use these same Lego-like components to build new planning services really, hopefully, quite quickly. And this will be a good test of that. So we're going to see if we can put together a basic testable alpha, not perfect, but a basic working testable alpha of that before Christmas. And we'll share more back on that on the next show and tell, which presumably will be after Christmas. So in the meantime, have a good Christmas.
Thank you both. We have had one question come through from Stuart Carter at Southwark. It's sort of a three-part question. It's about the red line boundaries. So he said, in the background, are the red line boundaries mentioned stored as objects within a consolidated red line data set? And he said, if so, does that data set build up over time? And then the third question is, do these map objects have references to its application within the attributes? And actually, there is also a fourth part. Could that red line data be accessed perhaps as a GeoJSON? It is in the chat if you're able to read it as well. I'm not sure if Alistair wants to pick that up or any of the others.
Dav's going to give a much better answer, I think, probably than I am. I will give a highly amateur one. Dav, do you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Stuart, if you want to get in touch to discuss that in detail, I'm very happy to do so. So if I understand the question correctly, the red line data set does not build up over time. It's kind of a user generated and drawn polygon, as you've maybe seen on the demo there, which is then submitted to BOPs. I believe things like Uniform may be storing those individually and building a data set over time. PlanX does not retain that data, or it kind of passes it along to the back office systems. As for BOPs, we'd need a dev from BOPs to describe what happens with those red lines. Yeah, Stephen, you've got your hand up, so I'm going to pass the baton to you.
Yeah, unless there is one of the BOPs devs who wants to come in, what I was going to say is that this idea of the data getting richer over time is probably going to sit more with the register project that Ed was describing earlier, and it's definitely something that we're really thinking like forward about. And it'd be great to get in touch with you, Stuart. Freya said that you're the GIS manager at Southwark, so it would be great to get you involved in these really early discussions during this discovery phase as well, to expand on that a bit more. But I think, yeah, Daf's given a sort of, that's where we are now, but obviously this is a vision for the future and how we can make that data richer as applications get decided and planning history and so on. So yeah, really good point.
Great, thanks everyone. We'll pass back to Sarah now to talk about the DLUC updates.
Thanks, Freya. Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah. I'm from DLUC. I'd like to talk to you about our planning software improvement fund. As you probably all know, the department has funded the Open Digital Planning project, and we are looking now to, we've got a fund open to support the improvement in software and digital services used by councils for development management activities. So there are 3 tracks for this. Track one may be the most interesting one for people on this call. This is an invite to apply to join the Open Digital Planning team to work with the teams to build the Planex and BOPS products and the services on top of those. There are 2 more tracks which you can read about there. Tim's popped a link into our website there as well, which can provide you with all the information you need. However, if you need even further information, we do actually have a Q&A session next week at the 14th of December. So if you've have had a read of that information and would like to find out more, we are holding reasonably informal Q&A sessions at 11 o'clock on the 14th. We do also have one in 14 minutes, but I believe we are fully booked. But if you would like to come along to that one, pop me a message on Teams and I will see if I can sneak you in. So yes, we also do have a roundtable for chief planners. We have had feedback that'd be really useful to have that discussion at that level. So that is taking place on the 14th of December. You can register for that via Eventbrite 2, but that is just for chief planners and leads really with your LPAs. And yeah, key information really is that the fund closes on the 23rd of December. So if you are interested, if you do want to find out more, if you want to get involved in being part of building these great products and improving digital planning and development management within your LPA, please do apply. Please do come and talk to us. We'd really welcome your applications.
Thanks, Sarah. So we have a moment for anyone to add any final questions in the chat. We did get a question from Rowan, which Stephen already answered. So that was about the BOPS workflow, if that was custom created or not. And Stephen confirmed that that is custom created. We haven't used the workflow engine for that. And then we had a comment from Stuart as well about maps. So we have taken that comment on board, Stuart. So thank you for that. Okay, I can't see any more questions. If we want to go to the next slide, Sarah, and then maybe if anyone else wants to put anything in the chat, we'll pick that up just before the end. So thanks everyone for coming today, and for anyone that's asked us questions. We really appreciate the feedback that we get from you. It's great to see so many people on this call today. It's really nice for us to be able to demo the work that we've done to get that live feedback from you. Kieran Jones has just put, he wants to ask something.
Yeah, hiya. I'm Kieran, so I work in the DLUC team. I'm commercial officer here, thinking about strategies. I've got a survey, so for those about your planning software. So I'm just going to pop that into the chat now. For those who haven't done it before, or it'd just be really helpful in terms of me thinking about strategy, getting a better idea of how the market works for you at the moment, just to inform some of my thinking and my activities. I'll pop that in now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the next show and tell is in around 2 months' time, on Wednesday, the 1st of February. So we'll send out more details about that before then. And we have got our contact details in here for anyone who needs them as well, and our project website, which you should visit if you haven't already, because it's a really, really good website. So we're really pleased with that. And Kieran, she's put a couple of links in the chat there for people to pick up. So thanks again for coming, and we hope to see you at the next show and tell. Right, I think anyone who's in the project team, we can leave this call now. And Sarah's got
Right.
the recording.
Thanks, Freya. Well done.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.